Okay, question about installing a knock sensor on my EFI conversion. I bought myself a Bosch sensor, and I've seen a few threads where, people do mount them on the underside of the heads. They mount the knock bridge underneath, but I'm not going to do that on this one. I want to try the single knock sensor to see how it works. I know plenty of people do it. And you see them mount them under here, and then they mount the throttle plate on. Obviously you have to put a spacer in there, and they mount the throttle plate on top. Okay, and that would be tightly sandwiched against the case. So I guess that's meant to pick up any knock events from either side of the engine. But my question is, does it need to be mounted underneath? Because if there's this thick aluminium spacer, as we know there is, then you have your shroud that goes on, then that goes on, and then this plate is bolted firmly and directly to the case on all hard aluminium points. And I'm not sure why we have these extra threaded holes here, but what's to stop you from mounting a knock sensor on the top here? Would this be just as effective as mounting it directly onto the case under here? Would love to know. Okay, this is going to be a pretty basic kind of a test to measure the effectiveness of knock sensor placement, and I'm by no means an expert, so please take this with a grain of salt, but I'm going to hook it up. I'm going to mount it at different locations on the engine and sort of tap the engine with a hammer or a socket or something and just measure the voltage that is read off by my meter. The first place I'm going to mount the sensor is a common place, which is this post, which is where the throttle bell crank plate mounts. I've noticed it's actually recessed in here for the spacer. So what I'm going to do is fit a washer that just goes inside that recess. So now the sensor can sit flatly onto that washer. I'm then going to mount my own spacer, which I've put somewhere. It's a bit shorter, like that. And then I'm going to screw a nut down on top. And we'll give it a little bit of a tighten. Not crazy tight, but a bit tight. And I'm going to plug in my meter. And they say to have it on AC voltage, which is what it's set to. And for whatever reason it shows 1 millivolt, but anyway. So I'm just going to use, this is just my little a punch just to sort of tap around. So I'm just going to tap the stud first. So even though I think I'm tapping the stud exactly the same time each time, it gives me quite different readings. If I tap the sensor, okay, so now I'm going to start tapping the case. Now I don't know what knock is meant to really sound like. I'm sort of just doing a general test here. So I've always tapped the side of the case here. What about under the heads? Or tap the cylinder even. Oh, there's the tin. Cylinder number 2. Oh, that's the tin. Not really getting anything there. Oh, a little bit. Now let's go to number 3. Let's move the meter a little bit. Whoops. Give myself some space. Oh, you can't read it like that, can you? Go for number 3. Number 1. The cylinder. We'll now go to the other side of the engine. We'll go to cylinder number 4. Cylinder. What about the cam tower? Yeah, it reads that. number 5, number 6. So I guess that sort of, I mean, the general consensus is that the closer the cylinders are, the better it seems to pick up. And these ones being a little bit closer should be a bit better, but it's, you know, we're splitting hairs. Oh, if you hit it with the side as opposed to the tip. Maybe, who knows? Look at that. So it's not an exact science, so I'm now going to... My question was whether I could mount this on the top of the throttle plate, would it make much of a difference? So let's do that next. So I've mounted the throttle plate, the bell crank, with the normal aluminium spacer, and for whatever reason mine has these 2 M8 threaded holes. I actually don't know what these are for, but that's where I'm going to bolt this sensor to and torque it down. So just one sec. Okay, I started getting a bit paranoid about dropping things in the intake port, so I put some plugs in there. Okay, so I've mounted it to the top using an M8 bolt, and I'll start tapping away. So again, we'll tap the top of the bolt just so you can see me. Tap the bell crank. Tap the side of the case, probably nothing here. Picks up something. Post. Yeah. What about the bottom of the heads? Number 2. Number 3. Oh, sorry, that was number 1. Whoops. Number 4. That was the third one, I should say. But yeah, anyway, cylinder number 4. Definitely seems to be slightly less effective. I mean, this isn't a very scientific or accurate test, but I would say that is definitely less responsive than having it mounted to the bottom here on the case. Alright, now I'm going to try mounting it to the intake studs. Okay, so I just mounted it to the intake stud, and the reason why I've mounted it there is because I know we sometimes use the 964 knock bridges, which mount to the cylinders, but instead of mounting them to the cylinders, we actually drill and tap underneath the heads. We mount the knock bridge to the heads, and then we mount the knock sensor to the center of the knock bridge just here. I don't have one at this point, and I'm trying to decide whether it's worth the hassle. But let's just see. So we'll tap the direct cylinder straight away. So as you can imagine, that's responding fairly well. Let's go to cylinder number 1, so we're 1 cylinder away from it. Let's try cylinder number 3, up this way. What if I tap the post here? I'm wondering if it... It's interesting. It's interesting that when the sensor's on the post, it doesn't detect anywhere near as much noise from the head. Let's try the other side. So we'll go to cylinder number 6. Yeah, it's still picking it up from the other side of the engine. So, look, again, I'm not 100% certain, but I would say that mounting it to the heads is more responsive. The only thing I haven't done, and I'm not sure if I should, is remove one of these studs and replace it with a much longer stud so that we can mount the knock sensor directly to the case itself. But I would think that would be very similar to mounting it at the base of this post, because it's on the case. But yeah, if anyone could let me know what you think, and maybe I've just wasted my time here, but let me know. Okay, so here is my chosen solution for a knock sensor. So as we know, there is a recess here, and so what I've done is I've had a friend made me up this aluminium standoff. So the bottom is the same diameter as the recess on the case, so that will go there. I'll put a little bit of heat shrink on here just to insulate the body of the sensor, I think. Maybe not, I don't know if it's necessary. So there's a bit of slop like that. So the knock sensor will go there, and then the top standoff will go on like that. And then the throttle plate will go on like that. And that's how I'm going to do it. Except I think this might be a couple of millimeters too tall. So I might just have to get him to shave that down a little bit. But apart from that, she's all good to go. Okay, so here's my solution. Knock sensor, there's the stepped washer on the bottom. That's been machined by a friend. I'll show it to you. So you can see it's machined to fit in that little recess. Knock sensor sits on top. Spacer, and then the throttle plate goes on top of that. Obviously the shroud will be on now. Put the plate on, bolt it down, and I've used some shielded cable because people are telling me that shielded cable is the way to go. And what I've done is I've taken the shield and I've soldered some ground wire to it, and I've attached it to the engine. So I'm choosing to shield it. I'm choosing to ground the shield at this end, so the other end, which will go into the ECU, won't be connected. Okay, so that's the shielded cable there, because I'm pretty sure you're meant to only ground these at one end. So hopefully that'll get rid of any potential noise if there is any. And yeah, I'll put some heat shrink over this or some braid so that when it exits the engine shroud, so at least this will be protected from, will have some protection from heat. I'm not sure how it's going to last, but let's hope it lasts well. Let me know if there's any issues with the way that I'm proposing to do this. I thought I'd just quickly, oh, you can hear my magpies out there calling for a feed. I thought I'd just quickly connect the multimeter again and just do my tap test. I've actually torqued this down to 15 Newton meters because I believe that's the correct spec for the knock sensor. But anyway, interestingly though, it feels like it's actually responding reasonably uniformly. So let's just, I'll obviously test hitting the bracket again. And obviously, yeah, you get quite a large high voltage there. If I tap the case, like just here, tap the other side of the case. I'm just going to tap the heads now, which is, I believe in theory, where it would be registering knock, but anyway. That's at the base of number 3. Base of number 2. Base of number 1. Not quite as, oh yeah, almost. Let's go back to over this side here, so to number 4. So we're furthest away from the sensor now. Number 5. Number 6. Does tapping the cylinders do anything? So it's registering. I mean, as for how accurate this test is, I've got no idea, or how relevant it even is. And I know that we've seen people mounting the knock sensors on the camshaft towers. They actually mount the knock bars in here. They make some standoffs so they can mount the knock bar there, which is not a bad idea, I guess. But I guess if we tap the cam tower, I'm just tapping it up here. So yeah, obviously closest to the sensor has the most effect, which would make sense. But yeah, so this is where I'm going to run it. I'm sure it should work.